Hi. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Lana. Thank you, Joseph, for these amazing inputs. And thank you all for being here with 3,000 people in this hall tonight. That's fucking amazing. My French is really terrible, and I will try and make sure not to speak too fast. Cool. Okay, I tend to do that. So I was asked to do something quite unusual for a German radical leftist, which is to talk about good stuff that happened in Germany. For obvious reasons, we don't like doing that. So I wanted to talk about two really amazing things that happened in Germany this year. The first one I wanted to talk about is, it's a German name, it's called Ende Gellände. I don't know if people... Excellent, that was exactly the reaction I was waiting for, cool. So Ende Gellände was a wicked moment in the middle of August when 1,500 people using the tactic of determined but non-violent disobedience outfoxed some 1,000 cops and 800 corporate security to enter a lignite mine in Germany, in the west of Germany, in Garzweiler. And lignite, as you may or may not know, is the dirtiest of all the fossil fuels. And we, well, they, I suppose, you know, it was an action of civil disobedience. So people went into the pit and, sorry, I wasn't supposed to say that. These 1,500 people, whom I don't know, went into the pit and managed to outfox the cops and the corporate security to shut down the diggers and shut down that hellish operation for a whole day. But we didn't just shut it down for a whole day. We also started a conversation in Germany about a coal phase out, which actually means that we're talking right now about leaving fossil fuels, leaving this shitty, dirty lignite coal in the ground, which we know we need to do. We also We've also showed that there's now a massively powerful anti-coal movement in Germany that can enter the footsteps of the massively powerful anti-nuclear movement, which just a few years ago, in a massive victory for social movements, fought for and won a nuclear phase-out in Germany. We're getting out of that dirty fuel as well. And finally, that amazing action, Ende Gellände, opened the path for something that would be really amazing, namely a highly industrialized country like Germany, not just getting out of nuclear, but also getting out of fossil fuels and really moving towards a decentralized, democratic energy transition based on renewable energy that's not owned by large-scale corporations, but owned by people, by local cooperatives, and by municipal utilities. And that is possible. We know it. And because some people like to say, oh, there's all this amazing stuff happening in Germany, thank you, Angela Merkel. That was not, just a quick note to everybody, that was not the bloody government. That was social movements. The anti-nuclear movement, the climate movement, the anti-coal movement, and the new energies movement. If anyone's going to leave fossil fuels in the ground, it's not those governments that are meeting up in Le Bourget. It's the social movements that are fighting this fight for climate justice from below. And so then another interesting thing happened in Germany some 2 months later. In October, Berlin saw the biggest demonstration since the Iraq War in the country, when some 250,000 people from all walks of life turned out on the street to fight against TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. If TPP is NAFTA on steroids, TTIP is like the WTO on crystal meth. And exactly. And Now, the amazing thing about that we can win the fight against coal in Germany and for an energy transition, and the amazing thing is it's actually possible that we can win this fight against TTIP in Germany and beyond. Like the Financial Times, the newspaper I read religiously because what's important for capitalists can't be unimportant for anti-capitalists, Noam Chomsky once said. So I shouldn't plug the Financial Times here, that's terrible. No, the thing is that TTIP, like TPP, is a massively important project of global elites because social movements have contributed to shutting down the WTO. The WTO is a dead letter. Nobody cares about the WTO anymore. It's now TTIP and TPP. That's how the global elites have moved their strategies. And just recently, the Financial Times wrote that the single biggest problem for this massive elite corporate offensive is, as they so nicely put it, German public opposition. And that's in fact just code for us, for social movements. That is their biggest fear. If anyone can stop TTIP, it's us. So there's only a tiny little problem. Well, there's several. But one problem is that those two movements that I've talked about, energy transition, anti-coal, climate justice on the one hand, and the anti-TTIP movement, they're not really kind of meeting, they're not really coming together. And that's a real problem. There was basically some research done on this sort of massive 250,000 people demonstration. And people were asked, why are you here? And the media had written a load of crap about this being a movement of hysterical nationalist idiots. People actually asked, the usual kind of attack that happens in the media when there's a powerful social movement. And people were asked, why are you here? And most of them said, because I'm afraid for my democratic rights. If this TTIP stuff is passed, I know that the stuff that I vote on a local level or at a national level will be irrelevant if it doesn't fit with the corporate agenda, exactly as our friends here have shown in the last few minutes. Basically, the so-called free trade is about taking power away from the local and the national level and giving it to corporations, unaccountable international institutions, and cabals of lawyers. Now, if free trade is about taking power away from the local level and shifting it to the unaccountable global level, then that really should matter to us as a climate justice movement. Because there are still some people, I think, in the climate movement who've grown up thinking that climate change is about parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere. It's really not. Climate change is about power. And climate justice is about power. It's about who has it and where it lies, and it needs to lie with us and not up there. Because we can't go up there. We can't go to the Bolshoi. We can't even protest on the streets of Paris. But the power needs to be with us. So we can win these fights, but only if we bring them together. Let's fight to keep fossil fuels in the ground, but let's also fight to shut down TPP, TTIP, and this whole so-called free trade agenda. What we need to do is not fight against disembodied molecules in the atmosphere. What we need to do is to fight to reclaim our power. Thank you very much.